And you gotta talk right into that mic for everyone. Okay, you are live.
Okay, we're live now?
Yep.
Good.
There we go. Okay, call the meeting to order. I'd ask for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Bob, seconded by Aaron, thank you. Any additions or alterations to the agenda? It's not. Any declarations, conflict of interest, general nature thereof? Let the record show there are none. Approval of the minutes of October the 14th. We have a mover and a seconder, moved by Marilyn, seconded by Aaron. Any discussion, errors or omissions arising out of those minutes? Let me see, where are we here? I'll get it here in a minute. But right at the end it says Chairperson Clancy discussed the dissolving of the committee. Yes, I did, but also too, I was just reflecting to the committee that Bob and me have been called in earlier, quite some time before that. I had a discussion with Jason and Brian on the dissolving of the committee. And I just wanted to make the committee aware of this is probably what was going to happen. I don't know this year, maybe next year, I'm not sure. But I just didn't want to be the fall guy for it all.
Chairperson Clancy, just quickly on that, would you like us to update the minutes to be more wholesome and reflective of that commentary? We'll provide that back.
Yeah, I would like to see that adjustment made in the minutes. That's only me. How does the committee feel?
Sounds good.
Okay, everybody in agreement? Yep. Okay. Did they note of that, Brooklyn? Gotta punch that real hard, you make it work. Okay, minor variance application, A12-2020, Shetler, I think that's you, sir?
Yes.
Jason, do you wanna bring us up to speed, or anything more that we need to know on what, besides what we have in front of us?
I can do that, your chair. Through you, just a quick overview to the application, if you'd like. Subject property is 1018 Cragen Road, approximately 4 kilometers north of Newburgh. It's the subject property is somewhat irregular in shape based on the configuration of the property and the existing development on the property. There is difficulty in determining and citing a new building that would be fully compliant with yard setback requirements. So the applicant before us tonight is seeking to construct a 2-story addition on the eastern side of the existing single-family dwelling where an attached garage already currently is located. Through this application, a portion of that existing garage would be removed to make way for a larger garage on the at grade with an increase of habitation or floor area to the single-family dwelling on the upper story. So the applicant is working in removing a portion of the existing building to try to make a better compliant location with respect to that side yard setback. That said, the proposal is still approximately 1.5 meters from the interior side yard, whereby the bylaw requires a 5-meter interior side yard setback. So there's a 3.5 meter relief that's being sought for that side yard setback. As noted earlier, that irregular shaped parcel with the rear lot line coming back on an angle, the jut in essentially in the parcel fabric makes that 10-meter rear yard setback very difficult to comply with as well. And there's a minor adjustment to that necessary setback that's being sought. As you can see on the sketch, the parcel fabric can be better understood than what I could explain. In the review of staff, the 4 tests of the minor variance have been satisfied in the proposal. And with that, as well as the commentary received from all the other technical agencies, there has been no noted concerns with recommending approval on this application. The neighbor to the east of the subject property also owns the lands to the rear, so the side yard and the rear yard setback. If we're looking for who that may affect, would be on that same property owner. It would be the one property owner. And there has been no correspondence received through the processing of this application or no concern from them as it relates to these reductions. So I just want to note that we have provided public notice in accordance with the act and put signage on site at tonight's meeting, mail outs to the neighboring property owners within 60 meters. So there has been ample opportunity for public comment. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have as it relates to this. And as you know, the applicant's here too to answer anything further. Thank you.
Any committee members have any concerns, questions? None? Do you have any concerns? Okay, I'll need a mover. Move by Bob. Seconder? Peter, thank you. Any further discussion, concerns? All those in favor? Carried. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Get filled.
Cheers, make sure you get that one last one.
Can I just make a comment
That's
on
fine.
these minor variances? When I look at all 3 that we're doing, it goes back to the days when there was very poor planning or no planning.
No plan.
So when you look at some of the, because I look at the surveys and I see, what a weird configuration. Why did you do this? And this type of thing. So when you get back in those days, of course, people did what they wanted at the time with no consideration. And then today's regulations just don't fit what's there. So I have no problem with these minor variances in general when they fit in this category where things were done 30, 40 years ago that don't fit today. People want to make changes. So it's a good avenue to
It's crazy the lot configurations like that, right? If you wonder what year that's
Actually, the day that I did it, was there, and he explained to me that the gentleman was free for all the property.
Oh.
Just didn't want to take too much of his time. And of course, in those days, that was important.
right. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is A01-2021, Fairburn. Jason, do you want to bring us up to speed? Is there anything, additions or deletions, and the information we have in front of us?
Thank you, Your Chair. I don't know if it's an addition or deletion, but I can provide a bit of an overview if you'd like.
Yes, please.
As it relates to this property, known municipally as 357 Academy Street in the village of Newburgh, which was once the home of a cheese factory. The applicants before us this evening are seeking the approval to construct a single-family dwelling on this parcel, and it's currently a vacant parcel. With respect to that previous use of a cheese factory, there was since that operation, there was a conversion to a residential use at some time ago, and a designated substance report was completed with the Ministry of Environment's blessing that the property was to the cleanliness and the satisfaction of their stipulations to facilitate construction of a residential use on this property. So I just wanted to provide that overview to say from an environmental perspective, there's not been a concern identified from any of the technical reviewers, including the ministry. Speaking to our previous application this evening with irregular parcel fabrics, this parcel before us is not necessarily maybe the most irregular in shape, but there are some challenges with respect to topography as well as water courses on site to understand where a fully compliant building location could exist. And that said, I don't believe there is a fully compliant building location on site based on a 30-meter setback from a water course for septic and for dwellings, as well as all of our side yard requirements. So with that, staff have been working with the Fairburns for I think 6-8 months now on coming up with what we believe to be the best application for the subject property that we consider to be constrained. As you can see, coming in off of, there's double frontage, sorry, so coming off Academy Street, there's not proposed to be a driveway or an entrance to the site, as the driveway and entrances are proposed off of Front Street, crossing over the water course and meeting the minimum per the Quinte conservation requirement of a 15-meter setback from the top of the bank. So the house has been pushed to the location that complies with that 15-meter, but then thereby requires a reduction in what's called the rear yard setback adjacent to the property north of this, addressed as 94 Front Street. Some may say, well, why is that considered a rear yard setback? Because really it's an interior side lot line that divides these two parcels. And the zoning bylaw of the township stipulates that rear yard setbacks are opposite a front yard setback. And when you have double frontages, you use the lesser lot area or lot frontage, sorry, to determine what the front yard is. So for that reason, the rear yard setback is actually 10 meters, where if it were a side yard, it would only be 5. And I believe before us here this evening, we're seeking a 3 meter side yard setback. So from that perspective, it's a bit of a nuance, and I would consider it to be more compliant with a 5-meter interior side yard, for example, because it would be an interior side. Second to that, there's a sewage disposal system, of course, that's being proposed because there's no municipal servicing, and the zoning bylaw for parcels that exceed half a hectare in size require a 30-meter water setback. Achieving a 30-meter water setback for a sewage system on this site is largely impossible. And the best that staff were able to work with the applicant as well as their certified septic installer in locating was an 18.3-meter setback from the water course. And you'll see that bed and tank up in the corner of the site. Also keep in mind when you're locating septic systems on these properties, you have to give consideration to the neighboring wells and making sure that you've got sufficient 50-meter setbacks on case wells and 100-foot on dug. So there's a lot. All that being said, there's a lot that's gone on with respect to the site and trying to understand where that compliant location could be. With that, there's been 3 requested variances before us tonight. The water setback for the dwelling at 15 meters, the water setback for the septic system at 18.3, and the side of the rear yard setback at 3. Staff have reviewed the 4 tests and the minor variance and have no concerns with recommending approval. The Conservation Authority has reviewed this and have no objections or see no concern, and all the other technical agencies are in the same position. We have received to date correspondence from the neighboring property owner at 94 Front Street, which is directly north of this property, and they've expressed some concern about essentially what would be considered looking at the rear wall of a new building. And there was question around what negative or adverse effect that would have on future development on their parcel. So staff have provided some clarification to what that may have, fencing, bushes, shrubbery, vegetation, etc. So from my understanding, there's been successful mediation between staff and that neighboring property owner in mitigating any concern that they may have on this future build. And the fact that the build, as you've seen in the elevation drawing, is a 1-story total build height as opposed to a 2-story building, there's a lessened impact on visual incompatibility between those two parcels. So, I don't believe the member of the public is here with us this evening, but I did want to point out the fact that we have received that correspondence and it's been included within your package this evening. All that said, we do have a recommendation before you tonight, seeking approval, granted that the couple conditions that speak to adversely affecting and ensuring that drainage is properly taken care of on site are upheld. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, as well as the members here that can join us.
Any committee members have any concerns, questions?
I do wonder where the well is, because I'm not seeing it on the drawing on North Untitled.
Yeah, Jonathan?
We don't have, there is no well yet. So, but the proposal, we have had chalks out, and the proposal, what they suggested is sort of in that, looking at it, front right, so sort of where the existing driveway comes in, where we're hoping to have that driveway coming across the creek, sort of between the house and the road, sort of in that area is where they have proposed it, so well away from where that septic would be.
And well, away from where they are.
Yeah, yeah. They've done all the wells in that area, so they know where all they are, where they are, and
Now, is that area of land in there affected? Isn't there some low water quality issues there a few years ago? Did that ever get corrected?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there, as noted previously with that former use, there was some essentially removal works or environmental cleanup that was done on this parcel. Weston Door Demolition, the local consultant, they completed that work through the guidance of the Ministry of Environment. With that, all that being said, there was what's called a designated substance report, a DSR, that was completed. And that DSR report has been put, it is on file with our building department. And any permitting would be held until that was successfully completed through the ministry. And I can confirm it already has been. So that's got its quote unquote clean bill of health for this site, in accommodating sensitive developments such as residential development on the site.
Okay. I wasn't really speaking in specific to that specific piece of property. It was a whole area in there at one time. But I think the wells were polluted. And water had to be supplied at one time, and I think there's a ruin still in that one area yet. If it's a newborn child, they have to supply water to that, bottled water to that household. So I don't know whether that area was ever completely clear or not.
I grew up in the house on the corner,
Okay,
like that gray lot there.
yes.
We never had any water issues the entire
Okay.
time I lived there.
So how long have you lived there?
I moved there when I was in grade 1, in kindergarten, so I'm 44, so.
so you're 20?
Yeah. 20 years I lived there, on that parcel.
Okay,
Yeah, the lot had the apartment building on it when I lived there. There was an apartment building there, and then afterwards the way it started out.
I can go back to the cheese factory.
Okay. No, we never cheese factories out there.
Remember it quite well. Okay, any more questions, concerns? Yes, Marilyn?
Just one more, and that is, so.
Speak into your microphone.
You've spoken with the neighbors?
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. And, I just wonder, because, unfortunately, we don't get to see the whole thing, I did walk the property. And to me, it didn't look like they would have to look directly at the back of your house. They would be more or less looking at the driveway. But I wasn't quite certain.
So yeah, we went and staked it out so we could kind of have a good idea. And yeah, so like if you stand up sort of where sort of the back of the garage, that's kind of more towards the middle of their property, and so then the main body of the house is set back a little bit further. And yeah, oh, that's great, because like the middle of the house is a little bit taller, and then the garage is a little bit lower. So yeah, it would be sort of this end of the garage, which is the lower part, and then, yeah, more towards the garage a little bit. And it's not a raised bungalow, we pushed it down and are going to use window wells, so it's not a super high elevated bungalow or anything like that too, even though it's a one-story house.
Well, it'd be nice to see a building on that lot.
Yeah. I just have property to use it.
Anybody have any more questions?
No
See a
questions.
mover and a seconder. Moved by Bob, second by David. Any further discussion? Yes, Aaron?
I just want to raise one point because I'm not sure if it's been discussed yet. So when you're going through the building process after the variance is approved, the property right now has a municipal address of Academy Street. Sorry, I need some water. And I'm just wondering if anyone's brought to your attention the benefits of readdressing the property or, okay.
So when I was here, I met with Jason and Jake last summer, and so I did fill in the paperwork to move our address over to Rent Street.
Perfect.
And we were just waiting because there was some money involved. We were like, okay, can we get the variance to make sure we can do what we want before yes, our address will change over to.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that hadn't been overlooked because of the importance of having emergency services, being able to find the property appropriately and cure later and every other important person. The four letters.
Yeah.
Four pilots speed
Perfect.
Any further questions, concerns? All those in favor? Okay. You're on your way. Good luck. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Question now, Jason,
Yeah.
about that zoning bylaw 2014-744, which says that
Thank you,
the
Cindy.
front lot line will be along the shortest road limit. Like, does that make any sense to you? Why wouldn't they say the longest road limit to be the front lot line? That would make a lot more sense to me than the short one thing.
You know,
Just a comment.
my only comment to that here is, I worked with bylaws in the past that didn't define it. So I'm just glad that they actually define the exterior side of the front yard, because when you don't define, then either or, and I've seen it, for example, where you have 2 front yards, so then you have 2 rear yards, and you don't have an interior side, and it's more complicated, so. I'm just happy that we have a definition.
It's just strange that they use the shortest, you know.
That was a possibility. Okay, AO2 2021 Kennedy. Jason, you're on the floor again.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Property address says 5333 County Road 41, owned by Julie Kennedy. We are seeking variance approval to facilitate the construction of a 24 by 32 foot, so 768 square foot garage, detached garage, towards the rear of the property. This site's located south of Aaronsville, approximately 2 kilometers. And for argument or for discussion's sake, it's an undersized lot given the zoning requirements for new lot creation as of today. Back to our conversation from the first application this evening, and we talk about abilities to site buildings and development on a site that's in a compliant location. It's very difficult when we're talking about parcels that are sized in this regard at roughly an acre compared to what we have from a permissions and zoning requirement that are more aligned with a 2.5 acre building envelope or lot area requirement. So all that said, the zoning bylaw requires that accessory buildings comply with the principal dwellings requirements if they exceed 11.5 feet in building height. When you're building an accessory building of this size, it's very difficult to get a roof height that's lesser than that in height. So the requirement is that the accessory building be set back 10 meters, roughly 33 feet, from a rear property line. As you can see on the sketch, the existing house, the septic system, the existing driveway, they're very limiting in where a proponent would be able to site a new building such as this. And through continued work with staff, we have come to the conclusion that this location is the best on the site for an accessory structure. Shifting down towards the south would necessitate an additional entrance onto County Road 41, which the County of Lennox-Addington, who regulates entrancing, is not most excited about. So utilizing that existing driveway is the primary goal of this development. As well, locating an accessory building to the rear of a principal building follows good land use planning practices, and not having the primary focus of your lot being an accessory building. So for that reason, staff are supportive of pushing the building back to the rear. The neighboring property owner to the rear uses the farmland as agricultural land and storage. There's not necessarily a sensitive land use in the rear that is concerning with respect to that reduced rear yard setback requirement. So from all of those perspectives, staff have no concerns. Again, the report before you details the 4 tests of the minor variance and speaks to the appropriateness of the development given the subject property. All the technical commentary that was received through the processing is included within your package this evening. There's been no concerns noted by any of those agencies, as well as neighbors who were provided the opportunity for public input. There were 4 property owners within 60 meters, and none of those neighbors have raised any concerns or questions to staff through this process. So with that, I myself and the applicants here before us are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any concerns, questions from committee members? Yes, Marilyn?
I just noted that the driveway is going to go in between the septic tank and the septic bin. I'm assuming you guys have all looked at that, and it's not a big problem.
If that's the question, through you, Mr. Chair, it's a great comment, Member Fenwick. We have looked at that, and our chief building official, who is responsible for Part 8 and septic review, has looked at that and given consideration to what would be required from a protection of that connection, from both the frost protection perspective as well as a structural perspective, so that cars aren't going to obviously affect and terminate that connection from the bed to the tank. So that's under review, and that would be something that's fulsomely looked at through the building permit process, as opposed to our planning process. But thank you for the comment.
Good question, Marilyn. I had the same idea. Anyone else? Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Aaron. Second by Marilyn. Thank you. Any further discussion, concerns? All those in favor? Carried. You're on your way. Good luck to you.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Drive carefully.
Yeah.
Severance applications. What do we got there, Jason? Nothing? Okay. All right, well, as we read on down into the Oka conference agenda.
Yeah, so
Thank you. Staff weren't 100% confident in that all the committee members who are OCA members received this conference invite for June. Obviously, with the state of the world that we're in right now, so will be a virtual conference, and committee members are more than welcome to join or partake. if there is opportunity to partake collectively, I'm happy to schedule that or look at that internally like we've done, I believe, on some previous workshopping. But that said, I do know that OACA Roca has opened it up so that it's not necessarily just a sitting of one seminar session and you have one day type thing to take on that information. It's opened up, I believe, for a 60-day period. So should your schedule not, allow for that, then there's ability to see that also at another time. So I just wanted to extend that information. We as staff, want to extend that information to you at the upcoming event, and mention that the municipality has a conference budgeting in place for all members to partake in that. Obviously, there's lesser fees than going to physical locations like we have in the past, so it's great that the fees are reflective of what we're able to get through virtual learning, and we can all partake together if that's the option or desires of the committee. So it's really more of an FYI and a heads up to what's coming up if you hadn't received it in your packaging. So yeah.
Everyone has been aware of this conference. And I see what's $250. Yeah. We're gonna make some money on that one. I was wondering, is there any chance of it being streamed through to here and we all can come and see it?
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to schedule that through here collectively. We can do it as a group. Obviously, our COVID world and gatherings seem to change week in and week out. So, I mean, should June 8th and June 9th be one of those times where we're hitting a change for a lockdown perspective, that might become an issue. And like I mentioned, they've opened it up to greater lengths and given the ability to view it at a different time. But if everybody is of interest to do it together, I'm happy to take that on. Yeah.
How is it, the rest of the committee feel? Marilyn, see your lights on.
I think it would be nice if everyone, were able to participate at the same time. That would be ideal. And I just wondered how soon, I really don't remember when they wanted to know, about signing up, and furthermore, how many people you would have to pay for in order to take part in this? A little different than the.
Yeah.
I don't know the details off the top of my head in terms of sign up dates, but if everybody tonight expressed interest, we can handle that as staff and make sure everybody's signed up and that is needed. I believe I'm an OCA member. I don't even recall. I may have.
I'm sure you are, Jason, because Roger always was.
Okay, so, and to your point of whether we need 6 attendees if we're all doing it together, or we can get away with one sort of cost and then we can share that.
That was my point.
Yeah, it's a great point. The only hesitation I can see from that would be it would maybe limit you in your ability to go back and rewatch or re-educate yourself if there was something you wanted to follow up on. But it's not a problem either way. We can look at it as we can look into it and speak to OCA about how it would be collectively rolled out if we were doing it as a group versus individually.
Anyone else have any comments? I think that would be a good idea. As far as I'm concerned, I would like to be signed up. Peter, you want to be signed up?
Sure, we can do it here, yes.
Marilyn?
I think so.
Bob?
Yeah.
Aaron? Okay, everybody's in agreement then, Jason, so I would appreciate if you would look after that.
Yeah, no, not a problem. There's a few fine women here with us tonight that have better connections with OCA than I for Clemens, and make sure that we're all signed up and taken care of.
Good deal.
And then we can schedule that, and hopefully we can do it all collectively here in the hall. If I
recognizing that some people have different schedules than others, so it could become an issue, but we'll do what we can.
Yes, sir.
Just thinking about the comment about whether or not we'd be able to. Just wondering on the comment about whether or not we can register collectively or individually. If we choose or are able to register collectively now, and then end up in a situation where we're in a lockdown scenario later, then we might run into a situation where only one person is able to participate. That's one concern that comes to mind. I'm supportive of doing it together, but if we just register as one, it's financially ideal, but limits flexibility later.
It's a great point.
It is a concern, Aaron, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess as we're going, we have no idea.
I know, first of all.
Like sticking your finger in a pail of water and pull up, trying to find the hole.
My thought was, we can speak to OPS staff, but my thought is we sign up individually and make sure that we're covered in the event that we're not able to do this collectively and keep our options open.
And also too, I think the question of if it happens to be a lockdown, then are they still, I guess they still will be able to present it, won't they, because it's all, yeah. We're not, you're just gonna say, so we get our money back, that's all.
Yeah. As you guys know, I think I've made my point known in the past that I'm a fan of collective learning and being able to ask questions of one another when we're taking on information that's new. So I'm absolutely supportive of trying to do this together in any way we can. And I think our community has been very resilient so far in starting off COVID and seeing that through, and hopefully this collectively our health unit can stay doing such a great job as what we're doing and allow us to do that. So that would be my hope and goal with this, that we can do it all together here in the hall. So let's if everyone else is collective on that, we'll try and do it that way.
15 more cases came to today.
Okay, I'll take back my phone.
What was that, Bob?
15 more cases that came to today.
Yeah. Well, I think, I like doing it collectively, because that's
I
what
did too, yeah.
these conferences out, we always done, there's groups and this and you could, and also you met people, but with a group, just like I asked Bob what he said there, I didn't catch it the first time, right? And that's the way, everybody interprets a lot of these things in a different way. Well, I think collectively, I would like to see it that way, but probably what you're saying, Jason, sign everybody up. Yeah, and then we're sure, because we never know, we all could be sitting at home.
And I mean, truthfully, we could all collectively do it together on those 2 days that are scheduled, and maybe there's a session that's on Ontario land surveying, and Peter really wants to go and rewatch that 3 weeks later, and if we only have one option or one sign in, it might restrict the ability to do that. So just to keep everybody's options open and keep the availability there, I think we should probably just schedule the sign up.
Yeah, probably, you're right. So everybody in agreement with Jason and the girls looking after this? Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? Any other concerns, questions?
Oh,
Here?
yeah, just, I always have an opportunity to do a bit of education here. And this is for Jason's benefit as well.
The only thing I ask is we're on recording in our meeting.
Right.
Can we do that after our meeting?
Yeah, sure. I would, I just want one of these.
That'd be my only
It's
comment.
a survey thing.
I'm happy.
I'd like everyone to look at.
Happy.
That's fine. We can do it after.
Any other concerns, questions? Need a motion to adjourn. Bob and Aaron. Thank you, people.
I think,
We have to wait for Christine.